Part 1. The Prince Who Left the Palace, If You Don't Return with Your Fated Mate. King Alaric folded his arms and looked down at his youngest son. Your mother will personally organize another 100 matchmaking banquets. A soft laugh echoed through the royal study. Queen Celestia smiled over the rim of her teacup. I said 50. You invited 98 noble heirs last time, Elias replied. They were all excellent candidates. They all wanted the throne more than they wanted me. The queen couldn't argue with that. For years, nobles from every kingdom had competed for the hand of Prince Elias, the youngest Omega prince of the kingdom of Asteria. Not because he was an Omega, not because he was beautiful, but because marrying him meant becoming part of the royal family. It meant influence, power, a future king's trust. Elias hated every moment of it. None of those alphas ever looked at him. They looked at the crown resting on his head. I don't want someone who loves the title of crown prince's brother, Elias said quietly. I want someone who would choose me even if I were nobody. Silence settled over the room. The king sighed. You've already refused princes, dukes, generals, and heirs from 7 kingdoms. I know. You realize the council is beginning to panic. I know. And yet you're still asking for permission to disappear. Elias smiled. For 6 months. The queen exchanged a glance with her husband. They both knew this conversation had been coming. According to old tradition, members of the royal bloodline were allowed to leave the palace once in their lifetime to search for their destined mate. Some found them within days, others never did. The royal family had always respected fate. Finally, the king stood. He walked toward his son and rested a hand on his shoulder. If your mate truly exists, then I would rather they fall in love with Elias before they ever meet Prince Elias. Elias smiled for the first time that morning. Thank you, Father. There are conditions. I expected as much. You will travel with hidden royal guards. I won't even notice them. You won't. You'll send us a letter every week. I can do that. And if anything feels wrong, I come home. The queen stood and embraced her son tightly. Promise me one more thing. What is it? When you meet your mate. She looked into his warm amber eyes. Don't tell him who you are immediately. Elias blinked. Why? Because if he falls in love with your title instead of your heart, he doesn't deserve either. 3 weeks later. No royal carriage, no glittering escort, no servants. A young Omega wearing a simple cream-colored sweater stepped off a merchant carriage outside the bustling city of Ravens Hollow. His silver blonde hair was tied into a loose ponytail beneath a plain cap. His expensive royal boots had been replaced with ordinary leather shoes. Even his scent had been softened with specially prepared herbs so it wouldn't attract unnecessary attention. No one gave him a second glance, exactly as he wanted. For the first time in 23 years, Prince Elias walked through a city where nobody bowed, nobody called him Your Highness, nobody expected perfection. He could buy warm bread from a street vendor. Watch musicians perform in the square. Spend hours inside bookstores without attendants hovering nearby. It felt free. As he wandered through the crowded streets, his captain of the royal guard watched discreetly from a nearby rooftop. His Highness seems happy, one guard whispered. He hasn't stopped smiling all morning. The captain nodded. Maintain your distance. No one must realize the prince is here. By sunset, Elias found exactly what he had been searching for, a small independent bookstore tucked between a bakery and a flower shop. A handwritten sign hung in the window. Part-time assistant wanted Elias laughed softly. What better place to wait for fate? He stepped inside. The elderly owner looked up from behind the counter. Can I help you? I saw your sign. You wish to apply? If you'll have me. The old man studied the gentle young Omega for a long moment, then smiled. You have kind eyes. I'll take that as a compliment. It is. The old man chuckled. When can you start? Elias looked around at the shelves overflowing with books. He had spent years studying diplomacy, history, economics, languages, military strategy, and ancient literature. If there was one place outside the palace where he truly belonged, it was here. I can start today. Neither of them noticed the black carriage stopping across the street. A tall alpha stepped out, dressed in the uniform of the Northern Legion. His silver eyes briefly landed on the bookstore window before he continued walking. Inside him, his wolf suddenly became restless, as if fate itself had whispered, "Your mate is here." Part 2. The Fated Meeting. The bookstore was unlike any place Elias had ever seen. It wasn't grand like the Royal Library, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Instead, warm afternoon sunlight spilled through large windows, illuminating rows upon rows of worn wooden shelves. The scent of old parchment mixed with fresh coffee from the cafe next door, creating an atmosphere that immediately put him at ease. This section is history, the elderly owner, Mr. Rowan, explained as they walked between the shelves. Fiction is on the left. Upstairs are rare books. We don't get many customers looking for those. Elias smiled. I'll probably spend most of my breaks up there. Mr. Rowan chuckled. I had a feeling you might. The old man handed him a simple brown apron embroidered with the store's name. Nothing fancy. It's perfect. Elias carefully tied it around his waist, for the first time in his life. No royal tailor had dressed him. No servants had fussed over every wrinkle. It felt strangely liberating. By the second day, the regular customers already adored him. Good morning, Miss Eleanor. You remembered my name? You mentioned your grandson was starting university today. The elderly woman beamed. Oh, you're a sweetheart. Another customer approached carrying a stack of books. I'm looking for something about ancient kingdoms. Elias's eyes lit up. If you're interested in political history, I'd recommend The Fall of the Seven Crowns. If you'd rather read about royal families themselves, this one discusses succession traditions from over 400 years ago. The man stared. I've been looking for exactly that. Mr. Rowan watched from the counter with folded arms. You've worked here for 2 days. I enjoy books. You enjoy them a little too much. Elias laughed. I suppose I do. That evening, in another part of the city. A military council had just concluded. The massive conference room slowly emptied as officers saluted their commander. Duke Blackwood, Your Grace. Adrian acknowledged each of them with a nod. His reputation was known throughout the continent. At 28, he commanded the Northern Legion, had never lost a campaign, and was considered one of the strongest alphas alive. Many admired him, many feared him, very few actually knew him. The moment the doors closed behind the last officer, Adrian loosened the collar of his uniform. His beta aide, Marcus, sighed dramatically. You know, what? I've received another 12 marriage proposals for you. Adrian didn't even look up from the documents in his hands. Throw them away. One of them is from the imperial family, especially that one. Marcus groaned. Do you plan on remaining single forever? I plan on avoiding unnecessary complications. Finding your mate isn't a complication. It is when every noble family tries to force the issue. Marcus knew better than to continue. Still, he couldn't help smiling. If fate suddenly placed your mate in front of you today, Adrian finally looked at him. I don't believe fate cares what I want. The following afternoon, rain clouds gathered above Raven's Hollow. Inside the bookstore, Elias was carefully organizing new arrivals when the bell above the entrance chimed. Mr. Rowan looked toward the door. His cheerful expression froze. Oh, so he actually came. Elias glanced up. A tall alpha stepped inside. His black coat was damp from the rain. Silver insignias decorated the shoulders of his military uniform. Several customers immediately lowered their voices. It's Duke Blackwood. the Northern Alpha. They say he defeated an entire rogue pack by himself. He rarely comes into town. Adrian ignored every whisper. His gaze swept across the bookstore before settling on Mr. Rowan. I requested several historical records. They're ready. I'll bring them. As Mr. Rowan disappeared upstairs, Adrian remained near the counter. That was when he noticed someone kneeling beside a stack of books. The young Omega was completely absorbed in reorganizing a shelf. A strand of pale blonde hair slipped free from beneath his cap. Without thinking, Adrian took one step closer. At that exact moment, Elias stood. He turned. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stop. Neither of them spoke. The bookstore faded into silence. Customers continued walking. Rain continued falling outside. Yet, all Adrian could hear was the deafening beat of his own heart. Inside him, his wolf suddenly stood, alert, awake. Then it growled only one word. Mate Adrian's breathing caught. Impossible. Across from him, Elias froze as warmth spread through his entire body. He knew the feeling immediately, the ancient bond every royal child had been taught about since birth. His mate. After years of searching, after traveling across kingdoms, he had finally found him. Neither moved, neither looked away. The invisible bond between them tightened with every passing second. Mr. Rowan returned carrying a stack of books. "Oh, Elias, could you—" He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes moved from the stunned Omega to the equally stunned Alpha. Understanding dawned instantly. Oh, so that's what this is. Adrian slowly walked toward the counter. Every instinct urged him forward. Protect him. Stay close. Never let him out of your sight. Yet another voice echoed louder inside his mind. A duke, a war hero, future head of one of the most powerful noble houses, and fate had chosen. A bookstore assistant? He stopped only a few feet away. What is your name? Elias. No title. No family name. Just Elias, for some reason. Adrian found himself wanting to hear that name again, and again. Neither of them realized that from the rooftop across the street, Captain Roland of the Royal Guard had witnessed the entire encounter. He quietly lowered the spyglass in his hand. A faint smile crossed his face. So, our prince has finally found his fated mate. Then his expression turned serious. I only hope the Alpha proves worthy of him. Part 3. A commoner could never stand. Beside me for several long seconds, neither of them moved. The bookstore had grown strangely quiet. Even the rain tapping against the windows seemed distant. Adrian had experienced countless life-or-death battles. He had stood before enemy armies without flinching. Yet, the calm Omega standing a few feet away made his heartbeat race more than any battlefield ever had. His wolf paced restlessly inside. Him, mate, the instinct echoed. Again! Protect him, stay close, never leave him. Alone, Adrian clenched his jaw. He had spent years mastering every instinct that came with being an alpha. He refused to lose control now. Elias was the first to break the silence. Your books are ready. Your Grace. His voice was soft and composed, though his pulse hammered beneath his calm expression. He had imagined meeting his fated mate countless times. Perhaps on a peaceful spring afternoon. Perhaps during a royal celebration. Never in a tiny bookstore hundreds of miles from home. And certainly not someone as intimidating as Adrian Blackwood. Mr. Rowan cleared his throat. Elias, could you wrap the Duke's books? Of course. As Elias carefully wrapped each volume in brown paper, Adrian found himself watching every movement. His hands were elegant, his posture flawless. Even something as simple as tying a ribbon looked graceful, too graceful. It reminded him of no, impossible, no. Common bookstore assistant could possess manners like those. You handle books as though they've never touched dust, Adrian remarked. Elias smiled faintly. My mother taught me to treat every book with respect. Your mother must be well educated. She is. He wasn't lying. Queen Celestia had personally overseen much of his education, Adrian noticed something else there. Wasn't a trace of nervousness in Elias, most. Omegas became flustered around powerful alphas. Some even lowered their eyes immediately. Elias did neither. He remained respectful, yet completely at ease. It intrigued Adrian more than he cared to admit. "You've lived in Raven's Hollow long?" "I only arrived recently." "So you're not from here?" "No." "Where are you from?" Elias hesitated. A quiet place. That answer only deepened Adrian's curiosity. Before he could ask another question, Marcus stepped into the bookstore, shaking rainwater from his coat. "There you are." Marcus stopped the moment he noticed Elias. His beta instincts immediately picked up the unmistakable scent lingering between the two men. His eyes widened. No, surely not. He looked between Adrian and the Omega, then a slow grin spread across his face. "You found him." Adrian shot him a warning glance. Marcus wisely changed the subject. "Santhi, council meeting starts in 40 minutes?" "I know," Marcus leaned closer and lowered his voice. "The council also brought another list." Adrian sighed. "Marriage candidates?" 12 this time. I told them to stop. They don't care." Marcus's gaze drifted toward Elias again. "If only they knew." Adrian ignored the comment. He reached into his coat and placed several gold coins on the counter. Mr. Rowan blinked. "Your Grace, this is far too much. Keep the change." He picked up the wrapped books. For a brief moment, his eyes met Elias's once more. Something inside him wanted to stay, to ask another question, to learn more about this mysterious Omega. Instead, duty 1. "I'll return when I finish these." Elias smiled politely. "We'll be here." As Adrian left, the bell above the door chimed softly. The bookstore suddenly felt emptier. Mr. Rowan glanced sideways at Elias. "So," Elias pretended to organize the counter. "So, he's handsome, I suppose." "You suppose? I've only just met him." Mr. Rowan laughed. "You young people are hopeless." After the old man wandered upstairs, Elias released the breath he'd been holding. His cheeks felt warm. His heart still hadn't returned to its normal rhythm. From somewhere across the street, Captain Roland observed everything from the roof of a nearby inn, one of the hidden. Royal guards landed beside him. "Report? The Duke has left. And His Highness? He seems..." Roland smiled to himself. "Happy." The younger guard frowned. "Should we inform their majesties?" Roland looked toward the bookstore window where Elias was absent-mindedly smiling while arranging books. "No." "Why not?" "Because for the first time since leaving the palace, our prince looks like an ordinary young man who has just met someone special." Far away, inside the royal palace, Queen Celestia sat in the royal greenhouse, carefully trimming white roses. Without warning, she smiled. King Alaric looked up from the documents in his hands. "What is it?" "A mother's intuition. You had one again?" "I think Elias has met someone." The king chuckled. "I hope the poor Alpha knows what he's getting himself into." Back in Raven's Hollow, Adrian's carriage rolled through the rain. Marcus couldn't stop smiling. "So," Adrian kept his eyes on the passing streets. "So, you finally met your mate." Silence. Marcus laughed. "I've known you for 15 years. I know that look." "What look?" "The one where you're trying very hard not to think about someone." Adrian remained silent. Marcus leaned back in his seat. "So, when are you inviting him to dinner?" Adrian's expression hardened. "There won't be a dinner." Marcus frowned. "What?" "He works in a bookstore." "Yes?" "He is an ordinary Omega." Marcus stared at him. "Don't see the problem." "I do. My position doesn't allow me to marry a commoner." The carriage fell silent. Marcus studied his oldest friend carefully. "Are you saying you'll reject your fated mate because he isn't noble?" Adrian looked out the rain-covered window. His voice was calm, controlled, almost emotionless. "A duke cannot build a future on feelings alone." Inside him, his wolf let out a Furious growl. For the first time in his life, Adrian Blackwood had chosen duty over destiny, and fate was listening. Part 4. The more he stayed away, the more fate pulled him back. For the next 3 days, Adrian Blackwood did not return. At least, that was what he told himself. On the first day, he convinced himself he needed another history book. On the second, he claimed he had forgotten to collect a report Mr. Rowan had promised to locate. By the third day, even Marcus had stopped believing his excuses. "You visited the same bookstore 4 times this week." "I enjoy reading." Marcus nearly laughed. "You've hated reading since the military academy." "I've matured." "No." Marcus folded his arms with a grin. "You're just trying very hard not to admit you're looking for a certain blonde Omega." Adrian shot him a warning look. Marcus wisely fell silent. Inside the bookstore, Elias carefully arranged a display of newly arrived novels. The little brass bell above the door rang. He looked up. Their eyes met instantly. Adrian had returned. For the briefest moment, something bright lit up Elias's expression before he quickly composed himself. "Good afternoon, Your Grace." Adrian gave a small nod. "Good afternoon." Mr. Rowan watched the exchange from behind the counter. Neither of them realized how obvious they were. One pretended to browse books he had no intention of buying. The other reorganized the same shelf for nearly 10 minutes. The old bookseller smiled to himself. Young love was amusing, even when neither person realized it yet. Adrian wandered toward the history section. "I finished the Chronicles." "So quickly?" "I couldn't sleep." Elias tilted his head. "Were they that interesting?" Adrian hesitated. "Not particularly." The truth was far more embarrassing every time he tried to sleep. His wolf demanded to know why he wasn't beside his mate. It had become unbearable. He had never imagined instinct could be this persistent. Elias selected another thick volume from the shelf. "If you enjoyed political history, you may like this one." Adrian accepted the book. Their fingers brushed again. The mate bond flared to life. Warmth spread through both of them. Neither spoke, neither pulled away immediately. Then, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Mr. Rowan cursed under his breath. "My knees aren't what they used to be." Without thinking, Elias hurried toward the staircase. "I'll help." Adrian followed instinctively. The old man had dropped an entire crate of antique books. Dust filled the air. "I told you not to carry these yourself," Elias said gently. "I've been carrying books longer than you've been alive. And today, you've proven you shouldn't." Mr. Rowan laughed. "You sound just like my late wife." Together, Elias and Adrian began lifting the scattered books. As they worked side by side, conversation came naturally. "So," Adrian said quietly, "what made you choose this city?" Elias smiled without looking up. "I wanted somewhere peaceful." "You left your family behind?" "They encouraged me to come. They weren't worried. They trust me." Adrian nodded slowly. There was something comforting about Elias's answers. Simple, honest, yet somehow, they always felt incomplete, as if every sentence hid another story beneath it. That evening, a royal messenger arrived at the palace. King Alaric opened the sealed letter. His stern expression softened almost immediately. Queen Celestia leaned over his shoulder. "Our son writes beautifully. He always has." She smiled as the king began reading aloud. "Dearest mother and father, Raven's Hollow is everything I hoped it would be. Nobody bows. Nobody follows me with endless etiquette lessons. I found work in a wonderful little bookstore, and the owner insists I eat far more pastries than I should. I think I've also met someone." The queen's eyes sparkled. "You skipped that line." "I did not." "You absolutely did." The king sighed dramatically and continued reading. "He doesn't know who I am, and I'd like to keep it that way for now. I finally understand what mother meant. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me without seeing a prince." The queen placed a hand over her heart. My poor baby, King Alaric smiled. I only hope this alpha has good intentions. Back in Raven's Hollow. The bookstore closed as the sun dipped below the rooftops. Elias locked the front door. I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Rowan. Walk safely. I always do. He had barely taken a dozen steps when he noticed someone standing beneath a street lamp. Adrian. He looked as though he had been waiting. I didn't expect to see you here, Elias admitted. I was passing by. Elias couldn't help smiling. The Duke of the Northern Legion just happened to pass the same bookstore at closing time? Adrian almost smiled himself. Perhaps. For a moment, neither spoke. The evening air was cool. Lanterns flickered along the quiet street. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. Would you? He stopped. The words felt strangely difficult. Elias waited patiently. Would you like to have dinner? A small smile spread across Elias's face. I'd like that. They chose a modest family-owned restaurant overlooking the river. No nobles. No officers. No royal banquets. Just warm soup, fresh bread, and quiet conversation for nearly 2 hours. Adrian forgot he was a duke. Elias forgot he was a prince. They laughed. They debated which books deserved to be called classics. They discovered. They both enjoyed rainy evenings and disliked extravagant parties. By the time they stepped back onto the street, the moon had risen high above Raven's Hollow. Elias looked up at the stars. This has been the nicest evening I've had in years. Adrian looked at him. His chest tightened. His wolf was peaceful for the first time since the mate bond awakened. This was what fate had wanted, and that frightened him more than any battlefield ever had. Because tomorrow morning the noble council would meet, and they expected their duke to announce his engagement to a noblewoman, unaware that 2 shadowed figures watched from the rooftops. One wore the crest of Asteria's royal guard. The other carried the insignia of a foreign kingdom. The prince has found his mate, the spy whispered. His companion's smile was cold. Excellent. His journey ends tonight. As they vanished into the darkness, neither Elias nor Adrian realized that someone else had learned the prince's location, and unlike his family, these visitors had not come to protect him. Thank you for stepping into BLVerse, where every story begins with fate, but not every ending is guaranteed. Will Adrian discover who Elias truly is before it's too late? Or will one cruel decision cost him the person destiny chose for him? You'll have to find out in the next episode. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Every subscription helps bring more original BL stories to life. And tell me in the comments, if you were Elias, would you reveal that you're a prince? Or wait until your mate truly loved you for who you are? Until next time, may fate lead you back to BLVerse.